In this Facebook Live, Andrew and I are having a conversation about men's self-care. It's really imperative that we really learn to establish good habits of self-care. Some of the blocks, though, I think, are a lot of our old male conditioning, and I hope you do get something from this and enjoy the learnings. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Good to see you.
It's much easier this time than last
Yeah,
week.
it worked. Yay.
So, yeah, it just worked easy. All right, shall we get moving?
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Okay, welcome to Men's Heart in Conversation. I really like that yeah, I just really like that title. And tonight the thought was men and self-care,
Yep.
or
Yep.
lack
Or
of.
lack of. Yep.
Or lack of. And can you? Yeah, I've just got to duck over to get my. I'm really well prepared. This is good self-care. I just want to
Yep.
get some notes.
Go for it. Okay. It seems like we're going to be looking at self-care tonight.
All right,
So,
got them.
ah,
Yeah, I
you're
can't
back.
hear without them.
No worries.
Yeah, the issue of self-care. Hello, Sharon. Good to see you. Sharon, I've got to put glasses on every time. I just leave these on. Sean, sorry, mate. This is mate Sean. This is really good that you're on, because this is we're having conversations about men's issues, and tonight it's about men and self-care, or the lack of self-care, or inappropriate self-care.
Mm.
Where do we start? Self-care. I need to fess up.
I was going to say, mate, maybe it's confession time. Yeah. You
Look,
first.
I've been really burning the midnight candle at both ends with, really trying to master or get to become more aware, become more familiar with the internet stuff. We're doing the Facebook Lives, preparing for the research for that, then downloading them onto YouTube and trying to create a therapeutic library for men to be able to access in the privacy or in their own time. And there's a steep learning curve.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just incredible. It's really steep. And there's something that's really driving me. I'm not sure what it is. But yeah, look, I was up till 1 o'clock last night on a Sunday night trying to get a few of them across the line, so to speak. Which is not really good. I could have stopped and done it today, but there's a couple of other things I wanted to get finished today, and I just don't know whether it's not good self-care.
It's a familiar story, though, isn't it, Mark? And it's one that I can relate to. Taking on too much work, focusing on getting jobs done. It always seems like there's never enough hours in the day to get everything done, particularly, for me, balancing a young family at the same time.
Yeah.
So self-care often goes out the window.
Why do we, where does that come from? What's our, how have we allowed that to happen?
Mm.
What are we doing that's not, we're doing something, where is it coming from? Is it old history? Is it,
I'm going to pass. I'll pass the buck. I'll pass the buck for a second.
Yeah.
Before taking ownership over what might be driving it for me, and just point out that there's a lot of social and cultural factors involved. I think when it comes to work and overwork, there's, we live in times where there's, I guess, mortgages are pretty big these days. So if we're dealing with a mortgage, or rents are very high, things are expensive. We've got to make ends meet. So that need to go out and provide for ourselves, for people that we care about. So I see some of that as coming from a good place, There's a drive there to go out and earn a dollar. Combined with, yes, there is a lot of, I think, sort of economic challenges that we have to face. So that's a factor. I don't think it's the whole story, but it's definitely part of it.
You don't think it's part of it, not the whole story?
Yeah. I think we can take another step out from that, and maybe we can have a look at, once again, gender roles, outdated gender roles, which maybe have served men in the past, but don't serve us quite so well now.
So those gender roles were the division of labour was pretty well checked in. We did this and they did that, and and that's how it is. To some of the stuff on self-care that's really coming out is really developing some really good habits, self-care habits, self-care rituals. And I wonder whether historically that sort of because men's sense of entitlement that, the old 6 o'clock closing, that was
6 o'clock swill.
The 6 o'clock swill, that's the alleged self-care, is that sound that, the 6 o'clock closing. And I wonder whether that sense of entitlement and through feminism's come on board that it's, hey, no more entitlement, which is fair enough. And it's like to put in some, the good habits of self-care, we have to create that time. And in the mortgage anxiety world, where do you find that time to fit it all in? And
so there's that practical reality around money, and then there's as the kind of gender expectations have changed. I'm thinking of an example. I was chatting with a female friend of mine recently, and she was telling me her husband had been invited to go off on a boys' weekend. Nothing too dodgy. I think it was mountain biking and no doubt a few beers at the end of the day or whatever. But she was telling me about how he was talking himself out of it. Oh, I'm not sure if I can find the time, and it's not so good, and and as she worked it through with him, he was feeling guilty
for taking the time to go have that time out. Okay.
So for some guys, I think that entitlement mentality has completely flipped itself on its head, and there can be a sense of shit. That's the old school. Where blokes just bunked off for a day of golf and whatever. I don't want to be like that. So, therefore, I better not allow myself that time. Incidentally, her message to him was like, bugger off, go and do it. And I guarantee I'm having a girls' weekend in a few weeks' time. And so he had that support, and that sorted things out pretty easily. But then, last week we talked a bit about sensitivity, vulnerability, sharing our truth, and if that's an area where a bloke is struggling and he's not talking about a need for self-care and time out, then those invitations might be getting brushed under the carpet, and self-care is not happening.
What is self-care from your perspective?
So,
is it self-care a fun time, or is it how do you define self-care? And a lot of the sort of the positive psychology literature is sort of suggesting that the self-care is the good habits. You might have 8 to 10 good habits that they become self-care good habits.
Yep. I'm going to step outside of habits and particular activities. I'm going to say self-care is anything that leaves you feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually nourished, renewed, energized, repaired. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anything that feeds those aspects of ourselves. Could be one, could be all of them. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it doesn't matter what you do. Who's to judge what the external
Yeah.
activity
Okay.
is?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if it fills you up, if it it gives you a sense of I can get back into the fray and parent,
Yeah.
work, whatever it might be, and you're re-energized and feeling good within yourself, then I reckon it fits the bill of self-care.
So you don't need to make it habit. Yeah. This is sort of talking about the good habits. What are what is your ritual? What are your um, and how do we? And I'm wondering whether this positive psychology stuff is sort of sitting in line with, because it's bearing in mind because we are so busy, with making ends meet, etc., and we've got the the family commitment stuff that we by locking this sort of stuff in. How often do you take time to leisurely read? And do you lock that in? Do you lock a half an hour in to just leisurely read rather than read? How much, I know, I do a lot of reading, but I don't do a lot of leisurely reading. I read to learn.
Yeah.
Again, is there anything, if that's a form of self-care, is that okay?
Of course it is. Yeah, I
I
think
don't
so.
mind, I don't know whether I wonder whether it's a sort of a boy thing too. I know there are some guys
Yeah.
that do like to. I just don't like reading. I don't know. It's like my brain wants to have its fix with knowledge or the intellect. Not that there's much of it, but the intellect sort of, what little bit there is there. It's
All the help you can get, eh?
yeah, it needs all the help it can get. So it's sort of, that's a bit of
Yeah.
self-care. Let's give the intellect a bit of a dosing here or something like that. I don't know. It's like,
I guess my question is, how do you feel afterwards?
yeah, I'm sometimes, that was heavy. No, I feel really, I really, it's just soaking in that knowledge. It's like, oh wow, it can be quite refreshing, really. It's like, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
really, and don't worry, the bit that I learned, half an hour later, I've forgotten the facts, or I need to write it down somewhere. But it's just that, and I wonder whether it's clearing the mind of the everyday, today things, and just deliberately focusing, like maybe it's sort of a mindfulness type of mindfulness that, it's the mind's concentrated on something, outside the stresses of the everyday world. I don't know, that to me is a form of self-care. Some
Do
of
you have
the, go on.
do you have a time set aside for that? You mentioned
No,
routines earlier. No.
I have, with that the positive psychology stuff. I have looked at a lot of that self-care stuff, and the good habits. And I wonder whether how we've sort of got a fair bit of routine stuff that we need to do, and e.g.
Yeah.
like making a bed, preparing the night before for the next day. I'm wondering whether there are elements of self-care. Hi, Melinda Hopper, how you going? Good to see you. I'm wondering whether they're really setting up the scene to create a healthy level of self-care, and those morning, setting up the evening rituals makes it then a lot easier, because when we find ourselves not taking that self-care and putting stuff off, what goes through the mind? What, is it a positive, is there a positive flow-on effect, or is there a sort of a bit of a critiquing, a procrastination? Oh shit, I could have, as soon as I hit that snooze button, I'm wondering whether there's a bit of negative self-care there. We're trying to catch up on the sleep, but how much are we then criticising ourselves for it, or not being a happy Jan on it?
It's a bit of a fine line. I guess, everyone's got to discern those things in the moment for themselves. Yeah. I know sometimes I'm quite happy to leave the stack of dishes in the sink and do something else, chill out, read a book, whatever, and come back to it later. Other times that stack of dirty dishes, I kind of get that stress feeling that,
Don't put it off, just get in there and do it. So what would be good self-care habits that you would encourage some men, they don't, if you've got a list of 10, they may not need to do all the 10, but what would your encouragement be for good self-care? Do you have a list of habits, good habits that they should do, and even using the word should, coulds and oughts, are they really good statements? What would 10, what are some of those good self-care patterns that you've created for yourself, or you encourage the people you work with to do?
Yeah, you're right. I definitely never say should, so I'm glad you raised that. It's going to be different for absolutely everybody. Maybe speaking for myself, I schedule in a couple of visits to the gym every week, and that's just my time where I go there and do something that's good for me, that leaves me feeling energized, and also, healthy body, physical health is really, really important. And it's also a mental health break for me too, because I'm just thinking about something very simple, lifting a few weights, riding a bike, that kind of thing. So I enjoy just that kind of zone out time. So some kind of physical activity has got to be in there. Meditation is a big one for me and always has been. So I do a mindfulness practice. I used to do that in the morning, but now I do it in the evening before bed. And that's good. It just helps clear my mind, relax my whole system after a hard day of work, and I rest much better as a result. Laughing's really important and often overlooked, although the positive psychology people talk about that. So they're onto something good there, I think. And I'm not afraid to watch a crappy American sitcom or whatever it is, whatever sparks my sense of humour at the time.
And that just gives you a bit of space, a bit of time out.
Yeah, it does.
And do you connect with Tamsin at that space? Yeah,
sometimes, or it might not be her humour. It just depends.
And I wonder whether that could be then deemed as self-care for both of you when you're connecting together, just laying back, kicking back, watching a movie.
Absolutely.
How would you, spending time with family and friends, is that an important component to self-care?
Yeah, it's a big one. And I notice myself feeling not quite right if I don't catch up with mates after a couple of weeks. I can sort of put it on the back burner and not do it, but I find, if I'm not having that time just to joke around, talk a bit of shit, or maybe talk about some more serious things. Once again, you can't do it on your own. And I think when we talk about self-care, sometimes we can get a little focused on solo activities, But, you know, involving other people's good.
In terms of food, self-care around food, how important would you consider that to be? You know, health, you know, what is it? There's an old cliche, the body's the temple to the soul. If we don't treat the body appropriately, how do we, how much water? And I think these days with a lot of the smartphones and a lot of that app stuff that's on, I wonder whether that's really encouraging us to be a bit more considerate about our health and well-being, and we're a bit more focused. And this might sound really wanky, but I've used those heart rate monitors.
I think a lot of people use those now.
And I've found that that's a great motivation to keep an eye on what, I don't know, it just helps. Oh, just the record, I don't know what it is. It's just something about it that's just creates a motivation to get out and do a little bit of self-care. And watching, when I went swimming, I regularly go swimming on a Sunday. And it's really good to just keep, that was a tough lap. What was the, and it just creates an interest in the exercise, and not being too harsh. Try not to be too harsh. Keep the heart rate at a certain level. What about stuff like starting your day well? How important is that to our self-care?
It's vital. Setting up the day well, really important. Whether it's just going outside, breathing in the fresh air, having a few quiet moments before getting back into it, eating well, setting up the day well with good food, maybe a nice coffee as well. Something as simple as brewing your own coffee and drinking that can be a nice, you mentioned rituals earlier, just having those little things that we enjoy and spark a bit of joy in the day.
What about one of the, I did a bit of reading over today, and one was talking about journaling. How do we encourage, how important, we've done a lot of journaling in our inner journey work. How do you encourage men, you're not just to write about the everyday, well, even if they are writing about the everyday, what about the planning, the organising, but just also giving themselves a space to write out what's going on physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I wonder whether that can help. But again, do you have to get into practice for that to be a part of your self-care?
Yeah, journaling's certainly a good way of dumping any pent-up emotions that you might have, sorting through any kind of dilemmas, arguments, issues, problems that you've had during the day. I find it's a really good way to help get my mind clear. Sometimes just sitting and meditating doesn't do the job, so getting it out is great. To be honest, I haven't journaled for a few months now. I haven't felt the need to, but I find there's times where it's good, and I'll get into a habit every day, and I might do it for a few weeks, and then it drops off again until I need to do it again later.
Is there a need that creates that? There's something that's stirring up, or something that might facilitate returning to that process?
Yeah, it's usually when I'm getting stuck in reaction to other people. I feel like someone's mistreated me, or I'm judging someone harshly, and it's playing over in my mind, and it's taking up too much headspace and distracting from just enjoying life and being in the moment. And I find those are good times to do a bit of journaling.
And as part of my self-care, I think I'm going to have to put these glasses on, because
go for it.
That's better. I can actually see. I'm wondering, what do we need to shift in terms of our consciousness as men to give ourselves a different permission, not that sense of, I wonder that, that backlash to that male patriarchal sense of entitlement. There's probably a bit of that still around, maybe. And so men are a little bit sort of loathed. I used to watch guys when I was the amateur surfer. You could always tell the guys that had to get home to, they'd be out surfing on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. And yes, you can go surfing part. Hi, Paul Ann, how you going, mate? It's like, they've got duties to go back to. Again, that's part of their self-care. They're fitting it in, which is really a powerful thing for them to do.
Yeah.
In terms of stuff like journaling, gratitude statements, starting the day well, doing a bit of learning each day, I think, grooming themselves. We shower and brush our teeth, but do we put on sunscreen and stuff like that? And I wonder whether that's not in our consciousness, and it's something that we perhaps do need to start to encourage the younger generations to take a little bit more care about their skin, their well-being, that physical grooming well-being. I'm not sure whether my generation, it's sort of the done thing. I don't think we used hair product back in those days. Maybe a bit of slick.
Bit of Brill. Wasn't Brill cream, was it, Mark?
Hey, I was a bit informed, but cream was something. I remember my mother using slick.
I think it was gel in the 80s. Hair gel. Was a good look. But how else do you got to get your mullet to stick up, so.
Yeah, but what is there something in us that stops us from opening up to that self-care and nurturing ourselves? Is there an old male energy that sort of critiques that and says it's not important in us?
I think so. Yeah. I definitely think so. Now, I've done this before. I'll try and limit this to the Australian context. I don't want to speak for any men living in Europe, perhaps. They might be a bit more progressive. I'm being a bit silly there. The Australian male identity has been historically built around a tough, resilient man who silently endures and forges ahead. And I think that image, that stereotype, is probably holding stronger in older generations, but I suspect it's still a very powerful ghost in the national psyche. And there's a lot of positives in that image. There's a lot of good things. And then there's also a lot that's missing. And then the cost is that, in attempting to be a rugged survivor who feels no pain and can deal with anything, we don't look after ourselves.
Yeah. And there is a strength. Yeah, there is a strength. The positive that there is a powerful strength in it. However, the downside is, it doesn't. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh. Maybe it doesn't take prisoners, and the self-care, the grooming, the sitting in front of a mirror, taking care of our face, putting sunscreen on, all those sorts of things is. That there's got to be a shifting, a softening of consciousness to allow the softer care, because what we've been talking about tonight, the self-care is the softer sort of stuff. Gratitude statements. What are your gratitude statements? What are we grateful for? Just for being here, being alive. How do we start the day in a positive way instead of snoozing, hitting the. How do we put our feet on the ground and move? We might need that strength. Stuff like meditation. Meditation is, there's a lot of talk around mindfulness. the scaffolding around mindfulness is the deliberate practice of meditation, that's sitting down for 10 to 15, 20 minutes religiously. And again, these become, whilst they're self-care, they do take on that habitual routine process, setting ourselves up for the evening. And I think it was Tim Ferriss who used to sort of say, look, just a simple routine of making the bed each day. I know, I do it, but don't you worry, there's a part of me that moans and groans. I don't, whether it's a resentment or a moan and groan, but I notice when I'm actually doing it, getting past there's a feel-good experience. There is a positivity in having finished and completed the job. Bang, it's done, you beauty. And it's sort of, I'm wondering whether that sort of sends off good neurotransmitters, the endorphins in the brain, that, and is that a form of self-care, giving myself that hit of, the nice neurotransmitters that can,
That's dope. It's dopamine, Mark.
Yeah, dopamine and, when you're exercising.
Dopamine fires off when you complete a task successfully.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a good way to get a dopamine hit.
And that is, in a way, self-care too.
Of course, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then, the heart of me wants to talk of, how in that self-care, just as I'm sitting here sharing it with you, it's like, my heart is starting to soften. And it's like, there is a real comfortability, being a real permission that it is okay to experience this, to allow yourself to have this. We are worthy of this self-care. And I'm wondering also too whether that's got to be a shift from that old tough, rusty old, that strong work ethic that men have had. Hi, Virginia. By having that strong, but learning to soften and bring it and balance it out. That's the sort of the shift. How do we create that shift and raise that consciousness to shift men's psyche around that? It's really important to, the body is the temple to the soul, and how do we care for it? All right, mate, any further comments on tonight's topic of self-care? It's just noticing being mindful of time tonight. Anything else? Hello, Marie. It's good to see you. We're just about to finish up. It's really lovely to to sort of do a shout out to the people that take the time out to listen to us. I really appreciate it. I just want to shout them out. Any other comments? Any questions?
Just that, listening to you talk then, Mark, it reminds me of our conversation last week, and we're perhaps coming full circle in a way. That sensitivity is an important part of this, and it's about sensitivity to our own needs, whether they're physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and stepping aside from those other energies which drive us on relentlessly to work, do, which are useful energies when we're out there and trying to succeed in the world. But if we can take the time just to be a little sensitive, develop that awareness of what our needs are, that's the gateway really to permission, allowing ourselves to do a bit of self-care.
Actually, I just want to read out what Beck's talked about. Mindfulness and self-care may be a very foreign concept to some men, especially when at the beginning of the journey. As you said, having a morning routine is brilliant. Would introducing the simple thing of enjoying every sip of the morning coffee be a good start? That's that. Yes, it would. Just that learning
Absolutely.
to develop, that make the beautiful coffee and the simple sip, just every sip, or having gratitude for every sip. And as you were talking there, I always ask, what would the heart say? What's the heart's answer to self-care? And when we're in that deliberation, that mind deliberation, need to be soldiering on, is what might your heart ask for, and what self-care does your heart need? It's
a good question to sit with, isn't it?
All right, let's have, Hello, Denise. Good to see you. Good. Shall we have a conversation? Yeah, let's drop it a little, maybe drop it a little bit and just see if there's a difference between the thinking mind and its process to self-care and what the heart might need in terms of its self-care. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Sounds
Let's
good.
be at it next week.
All right.
We'll be in a swanky hotel next week, mate. So I mean,
Will ya?
yeah, I might even have a little bit of self-care with a little bit of a wine aside. It's a really good thing.
I'll look forward to seeing that.
All right, mate. Take care.
All right.
Good
See you, bro.
conversation. Cheers,
Yep.
mate. I hope you gained something from this Facebook Live conversation. Two blokes chewing the fat over self-care. If you got something from it, give it the thumbs up and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button down below. Thanks, guys.